Hi everyone, my name is Arka Bhattacharya, and this video is going to run you through a few techniques on how to generate content when you are in a group discussion. A little bit about myself. I did my engineering from the College of Engineering, Pune. I have a BTech in Metallurgy and Material Science. I also did an MBA in International Business from IIT Delhi. 18 years of professional experience, and for the good part of more than 15 years or so, I have mentored a lot of students into the top B schools in India and abroad. I'm an avid quizzer, debater, and a reading enthusiast. I'm going to run you through 3 powerful tools that should quickly help you generate content when you are in a group discussion and a topic is thrown at you which you are either unfamiliar with, or you may be familiar with the topic but you haven't really thought about it or researched too much into it, and you just have a few minutes or a few seconds to quickly generate some talking points and get into a discussion. So a group discussion is a good exercise to test many things. Your communication skills are tested, how well you listen, how well you speak. Over 10 to 15 minutes, a panel can also quickly test your group and social interaction skills, your leadership skills, your ability to collaborate, how rigid or flexible your viewpoints are, whether your viewpoints are made logically or are they made emotionally. There are several things that, become apparent through the course of a group discussion. But the most important thing in a group discussion obviously is content. If you don't have good content, then it doesn't matter how well you speak and how familiar you are with GDs, you are going to be on the back foot. So for the next few minutes, let's just focus on how to generate content. So first, let me list out 3 methods. The 3 techniques are: number 1, keyword analysis. Number 2, VAP, or the viewpoint of affected parties, which is nothing but a stakeholder analysis. And the third is the PESTLE approach. So let's take a look at each of these. First, let me hit you with a topic that we will be using to use these techniques. The topic is: excessive violence in cinema should be censored immediately. Now, the keyword analysis is going to draw our attention to those words that have a little bit of meat in them. Some things that are open to interpretation. For example, we're talking about excessive violence. Who defines excessive violence? We're talking about in cinema. So it's obvious that this is going to impact movies, but it won't impact TV serials so much. But should it? Why should we restrict censorship if it is so imminent that we're talking about censoring immediately? As you notice, I've underlined. Then why is excessive violence only to be censored in cinemas alone? What about newspapers? What about internet? What about TV? What about OTT and Netflix? If excessive violence is going to be available everywhere here, then what is the great rush to impose censorship on excessive violence just in cinema, right? Straight away there you have 2 talking points. If we are talking about censoring immediately, then one more talking point that comes in is: who is going to censor it? How will they censor it? How quickly will they do it? And how fairly will they do it to the satisfaction of the parties involved in this? Does that make sense? So here you have the keyword analysis generating 2-3 points, as we just saw. In the previous slide, I left you hanging on, when we are talking about censoring immediately, the question arises as to who's doing the censoring, how will they do it, and will they do it to the satisfaction of all parties involved? And that right there is my segue or transition into method 2, which is the VAP method. For this topic, the immediate question to be asked are: who are all the interested parties? Who are all the affected parties? Who is affected by a censorship of excessive violence in cinema? Cinema goers, cinema makers, cinema infrastructure owners, cinema distributors. So anyone who's related to the cinema going fraternity, which in India, the thing about India is, in India there are 3 things. There's cricket, there's cinema, and there's religion, right? Maybe you can throw politics in as a 4th. So in India, cinema going is a very large fraternity. So if you are asking for this topic, who are the affected parties? Society at large, which is the cinema going public. Children and parents become an obvious thing because we're talking about censoring excessive violence. Movie makers obviously is a party. Who's going to censor it? The censor board. Is that censor board going to be a private entity selected by the public or nominated by the public, or is it going to be a government appointed thing? And if it is going to be a government appointed thing, then the government naturally comes into it. Who else? I mean, if you're talking about violence in cinema, then even technology and telephone companies will come into it. If we expand this to involve OTT and television channels, then obviously technology and OTT companies will come into it, telecom companies will come into it. So I'm just saying that there may be some unique stakeholders that you might identify, and when you're doing this thing, if you can identify a slightly off the track affected party, then your points will be fresh. Fair enough? So for example, if you look at this, it's very obvious that the movie maker, the censor board, the government, parents, children are going to be. But if you notice here, I'm talking about technology and telephone companies. How do they come into it? They may welcome this because it may mean that, for example, let's say, what is the alternative to an action movie? An action series on Netflix. Action movies are banned in cinemas or censored and therefore can't easily be distributed. Then the gainer will be somebody like an OTT company or a telecom company, and that right there is a unique point and perspective that this method allows you to add to the discussion. Alright, let's move on to the last and final technique, the pestle approach. So now we already have 3-4 points, broken 2 methods and came across 3-4 points. Let's see if we can add a few more. Now pestle, very simply broken down, is nothing but an acronym for political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental, and you can add some other parameters as well. Each of them may not necessarily always be applicable to everything, but every time you apply this, I'm sure you can get some new masala or some new talking points. For example, political. Is there a political angle to this? We just discussed that yes, there is a political angle, and will government act on this? Yes, if it gives them mileage with the public. If doing so makes the government appear good, then there is a political angle to this. If doing so harms their revenues from the movie industry, harms their goodwill with the movie industry, who at the end of the day are a small subset of public, and if in the absence of these kind of movie makers and their movies, if the general public does not value this move, then it will become unpopular and immediately, obviously. Therefore, yes, this is a point, but it may have already been done in it. Now, is there an economic angle? So if you notice, in the previous few slides, we've been focusing on some kind of definitional and perspective and opinion-based things. But now we come to the economic things. Here we can ask some questions as to who will censor it, in how much time, how fair is the process going to be, what are the penalties, are they going to be in terms of financial impact, or are they going to be in terms of time in jail? What exactly happens if someone doesn't do this? Again, take a look at social aspects. What is the impact of excessive violence on youngsters? What is the impact of excessive violence on those who have suffered from trauma due to violence and are triggered by seeing violence on screen? There are some aspects there which obviously makes this a social question, which is why this does have a social question. Okay, let's try the next one. Is there a technological aspect to this? Sure, if we're talking about excessive violence in cinema should be censored immediately, it doesn't apparently seem to be a technical challenge. But if I change this and I say that excessive violence on the internet should be banned immediately, just if you see one keyword changing, and now the technological aspect becomes paramount. How do you ban porn on the internet? How do you ban violence on the internet? Is it even technologically feasible? Even today you have so many banned porn sites, but does that mean that porn and internet is absent in India? We know that even children are very comfortable using VPNs and doing hacks, and accessibility to porn on the internet. It's really a technological challenge more than a legal challenge. It is not easy to do so because of the nature of the internet. So sometimes some of the questions may have some very technological or logistical issues. Legal aspects, we have discussed this. Even in the first two it came up. There are certainly legal aspects to this. And here I am going to just draw a circle around environmental ones, just to draw attention to the fact that apparently there may not be any environmental repercussion of this because we are talking about films, etc., and so on and so forth. But there may be an issue on which the environmental angle may be very important. So in a nutshell, break the topic down into political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental implications of the topic asked, and right then and there you will have quite a few talking points as well.